Hey everybody, how are you? Little spoiler alert, probably not going to hear the word conservation coming out of my mouth. We're going to hear some other stuff. What I'm going to talk about is sustainability and a new grand strategy for America in the 21st century. But first, before we get into the guts of that, I just got to throw this quote up here. It's my favorite quotes of all time. You know, Thomas Paine, back in 1776, wrote a little pamphlet called Common Sense. You know, don't you wish someone would gack out a new one, a part 2 today, huh? But Common Sense, very first page, says the cause of America is in a great measure the cause of all mankind. Wow, that's cool, huh? Well, you know, in 1776, when Thomas cranked out that pamphlet, he was talking about self-determination. I mean, that nutty idea that maybe people ought to have not only a say in the government they have, but maybe they even participate in it, you know, pretty kooky stuff. What a cool cause to wrap your arms around, to wrap a country around. Well, I'm here to ask you the question, today, in the 21st century, what is our cause today here in America? Because I'm here to tell you, after about 30 years, just under 30 years of being in uniform, I've got to figure it out. All right? And I'm never going to apologize for America, but I'm not going to make any frickin' excuses either. Right now, what are we for? I can sure as hell tell you what we're against, but what the hell are we for? All right? And the only way we can actually come to grips with this idea of what a nation is for is we've got to come to grips with this idea of grand strategy. It's the only organizing logic, the only discipline that allows us to take on what the cause of this nation ought to be. And I think that was the sense of Admiral Mike Mullen in 2009 when he was chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, when he asked me, when I was a Marine colonel, and a Navy captain named Wayne Porter, to consider this idea of grand strategy. What would be the direction that our nation could take so we could pursue our enduring interests of prosperity and security in this new 21st century world, all right? And I don't know what Admiral Mullen wanted us to do, but what Wayne and I ended up gacking out was this document called the National Strategic Narrative. And what does that mean? I don't know. It doesn't matter. But what we wrote was in this paper was, you know, if we really want to pursue our enduring interests of prosperity and security in this new, complex, dynamic, open systems type of world that we face, we've got to get past this manic, crazy focus on threat and risk. And maybe, just maybe, we ought to start looking at opportunity in the world. And after all, we are the land of opportunity. We're not the land of threat and risk, right? And maybe, just maybe, we could take a different approach to the world. And as we looked at how the world dynamics are, with all the interdependencies, all the connections, the open system nature of it, one central concept kept coming back to us. Now, mind you, we're working for the Admiral Mullen, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, in the Pentagon. And I'm about ready to say a word. If there's any Marines out there, please forgive me. All right? But we said that one concept has got to be sustainability. That organizing logic within a strategic ecology, as we call it, how this nation could pursue our enduring interests of prosperity and security. And it's not just because it's a greeny thing. It pisses me off when everyone says sustainability is green. Bullshit. It isn't. It's an organizing logic for a system. We, as a nation, are a system. And we looked at the scientific definition of sustainability. At least the one that we used was an organism's ability to remain diverse and productive over time. It maps directly to our enduring interests of prosperity and security. Diversity, let's look at it. Diversity means depth. It means redundancy. It means resilience. It's our national capacity to take a gut punch and come back swinging. That's where we've got to go. And if you think that security is just about defense, I'm here to tell you, as a card-carrying lifetime Marine, you know, it's not just about defense. It's not about keeping the bad crap from our shores outward away from us. Because get over it, America. I don't care if it's a hurricane and I don't care if it's ISIS. Something's going to happen. You're going to skin your little knee. You're just going to have to stand up, brush it off, you know, and suck it up. All right? There's not enough bubble wrap in all the world to wrap around every American's head to keep you safe. So deal with it. All right? Thank you. But security in the 21st century has more to do with how do we integrate our systems of food, water, energy, built environment, transportation, education, industry, so that we're actually addressing the human condition and not so worried about keeping the bad stuff away, all right? But there's also that thing in that definition about being productive. That's what we're talking about, prosperity, but we're really talking about growth. And we got to come to grips in this nation that the quantitative measures of growth aren't working for us anymore. If you just consider our physical condition, 1/3 of our nation is clinically obese. Our fiscal condition, the amount of debt we have. Our political condition, are you shitting me? Our social condition. These are the issues of our time. And maybe, just maybe, we could take a more qualitative approach to how we constitute, or how do we look at how we are productive. Maybe, just maybe, we could take a little lesson from a small country called Bhutan where they talk about gross national happiness, right? Yeah, a Marine said happiness too. Hope I'm not bending your brain too much. But beyond just our enduring interests of prosperity and security, sustainability also maps to a quintessentially unique American way of doing grand strategy. When we do grand strategy, we stand on our economy. We let the economy do the heavy lifting, and then we align our governing institutions and our foreign policy to take on whatever the big challenge of the age is. And we did it in World War II. We were the arsenal of democracy, where we fundamentally set up an industrial system so that we could arm and equip our allies to take on this big, huge thing of fascism, right? We were the arsenal of democracy. It's a beautiful thing, and it worked. By the end of the war, 70% of all the Allied war material was coming out of an American factory. What a surprise. And in the Cold War, Eisenhower's brilliance was that he focused on the economy. Yeah, we contained the Soviets with our military, but it was a contest of political and economic systems where we had faith in democracy. But we also did the hard work of building the industrial capacity, the economy, to take on the Soviet Union and outlast them, and it worked. But today, we still have that opportunity. But we got to come to grips with what is the challenge that we face. And I'm here to tell you, it's not frickin' China, it's not Iran, it's not North Korea, it's not ISIS. It's right here, it's all around us. The challenge of our age is this high mass, slow moving thing of global unsustainability. The global system is broken. It's unsustainable. And the problem with this problem is that it's a wicked problem. It's that you can't just go and reduce it down to components and just take care of them one at a time. You got to take it on all at once. And the way we look at it is that there's 4 big muscle moves within that wicked problem. The first one is economic inclusion, right? Now everyone gets scared. I think Al brought up that we're going to have 9.5 billion people stumbling around the planet by the middle of this century, right? Well, the number that gives me a sweaty lip in the middle of the night is the 3 billion people we got to fold into the global middle class. And when they arrive, their resource consumption goes up 300%, which leads us to part number 2 of this big problem, is ecosystem depletion. I mean, we are kicking Mother Nature around like we've never done before. Right now, it takes 1.5 planets worth of resources just to support the human condition. 1.5 planets. When those 3 billion people come in the middle class, it's going to take 4.5 planets. Look outside the window. There's only one of these pills spinning around out in the universe, right? Got to come to grips with it. And oh, by the way, if you think that the old economy, the one that happened we had before 2008, if we could just get back to there, we'll get out of this Great Recession. Well, that's bullshit too, all right? Because we're not in a Great Recession. We are in a contained depression with extraordinary intervention on the part of central banks just to keep an old, moribund, calcified economic system alive. Right? And we didn't come to grips with the fact that 2008 was as big of a catastrophic economic event as what happened in 1929. At least we had the wisdom in 1929 to redesign, to put in mechanisms to deal with the world as it was, not how we wished it would be. And we haven't done that hard work. Because even if we could get the old economy going, the bottom line is that it's crumbling from the inside, which is the 4th component, is that we're in a resilience deficit. Now, our systems may be hyper-efficient, and they may be goody gumdrops. I'm so glad, right? The problem is that when the changes of the world start coming, particularly the ones that Mother Nature is going to throw at us in the form of climate change, those systems are too brittle. They can't deal with them, and they're going to crumble. We've got to come to grips with this. And yet, for some reason, we keep doubling down on an old economic engine that was formed post-World War II, that ran out of gas late 70s, early 80s. But we keep doubling down, and I don't want to bust anybody's other bubble. I don't know how many bubbles you have, but I'm going to bust another one, right? If you're waiting on Washington to make it happen, I don't know, maybe I'm the only one thing, but maybe they're a little bit assed up right now, right? It ain't going to happen from there, right? But here's the good news. Because we're frickin' Americans, there's an opportunity's way out. But first, you got to strap on some uncomfortable goggles, and they're called sustainability goggles. But if you strap on those goggles, you can see a market opportunity way out. We have the big, deep pools of demand that exist right now in our economy that remain untapped, that can absorb trillions and trillions of dollars of corporate cash that's just sitting on the sideline, hedge fund cash that's just sitting on the sideline, retirement funds that are just sitting on the sidelines, right? This is a $1.3 trillion economic opportunity on an annual basis that we just are leaving on the table. And the 3 big bins of demand, sustainability points us right to those solutions. First is around walkable communities, housing, regenerative agriculture, and then a productivity revolution. Let's talk about housing real quick. According to the National Association of Realtors, upwards of 60% of Americans don't like where they live. More specifically, they seek the attributes of walkable communities in their next housing purchase. Yet only about 15% of the market will support that demand. Okay, 60% demand, 15% supply. Man, that's a freaking opportunity, right? And why is that? Well, we are at the biggest demographic convergence we've seen in a market in a long time. Right now, baby boomers and millennials make up the majority of our population. Well, guess what? Both of them are seeking the same type of housing product, walkable communities, mixed use, mixed income, service-rich, transit-oriented communities. I mean, baby boomers, the kids are out of the house, they're downsizing, right? They don't want to live in a double-gated community. Sorry, Hilton Head. They don't want to live in a double-gated community anymore. You know, where the kids take away their keys, they get stuck in a home, somebody shovels applesauce in their face. Nobody wants to live that way. The AARP is all over this. Aging in place in a community where people can get around, get to services, be engaged in their communities, right? And millennials, they don't want to go back to the suburbs anymore either, at least how they're currently designed. They don't want to go back there. Hell, 70% of them don't even want a car. Good luck living in the suburbs without a car. This is so huge. This is historic. This convergence in the marketplace demographically is 3 times the level of demand than what we saw post-World War II when GIs were coming home from the war. That demand signal for a specific type of housing in the form of suburban sprawl fueled our economy through the late 70s, early 80s. This is huge. It's historic. It's 3 times that level. Number 2, regenerative agriculture. We already heard Al talking a little bit about mariculture. This is a big money maker for this nation. According to the OECD, we need to increase global food supply 60 to 70%, and 100% of that has to be regenerative nature, where we fix our phosphorus and nitrogen cycles, where we restore our waterways, where we rebuild our soils, right? Huge, huge opportunity. And right now, we have the technologies to make this happen in the form of regenerative agriculture. We're talking about controlled environment ag. We're talking about mariculture. We're talking about all those things, all right? This is an immense opportunity to create a whole new generation of farmer entrepreneurs for kids that are looking for a job. Who knows? Maybe some, you know, what we talked about earlier, maybe somebody coming and moving home later when you're later years. Go out and be a farmer, kid, because the opportunity exists right there. And just to put some numbers around that, not only are the yields equivalent to our current, what we can call industrial ag model, acre per acre, but they're 30% more productive in times of drought. Again, climate change comes to mind. And oh, by the way, per acre, 3 times more profitable per acre than our current system when you consider full externalities. It's huge. And then finally, a resource productivity. We have the technology today in the form of advanced manufacturing, advanced materials, renewable energy, to fundamentally restructure our manufacturing base to feed that 3 billion new middle-class aspirants and all their desires on how they're going to build their homes and the products that they're going to have. We have those technologies today. And just so you know, it's just not a big wonky arm wave crap, you know, that everyone throws around. This stuff matriculates actually down to Main Street, where we can have real jobs, where we can have real small businesses, where we can revitalize our communities. Because right now in our economy, this eye chart that's at the bottom right there, that's just from a presidential study about manufacturing, but it basically just says for every dollar that any given sector of economy cranks out, what kind of ancillary economic benefit they provide. Do they create other jobs, other businesses, et cetera, right? Well, right now our economy is pointed at the right end of the spectrum. With retail trade, consumerism, and financial services. We only get 55 cents to 63 cents out of those sectors of extra added benefit, which is no benefit at all. But look what happens when we capture those 3 big bins of demand. We focus it directly at the highest end of that spectrum. First of all, with manufacturing, $1.35. Next, agriculture of all things, $1.20, followed by construction and transportation. But you got to design to that end. I mean, no, there is no I dream of genie. I'm going to blink my eyes. It's just going to happen. We have got to plan and design to this opportunity. And I'm a big believer, and if you want a new idea, you know, read an old book. So we read this guy's book. Anybody know who he is? Sir Ebenezer Howard. I love the name Ebenezer. I wish I was named Ebenezer. I mean, you just got to have swagger when you're walking down the street with a name like Ebenezer, right? Sir Ebenezer Howard, this roguish devil, he came up with this cool idea. He started the Garden City movement at the turn of the 20th century because he looked at the Industrial Revolution and said, man, that's not treating people too well. He was putting the human condition first, so he came up with this idea. Could you integrate food, water, energy, built environment, transportation, education, industry into a system that put the human condition at the center and still reconcile that with the magic and the beauty of capitalism? And he said yes, and it took off. And it was great. It's kind of a forgotten idea. But I particularly like this because he thought about everything. He even thought about national security in this. I know you can't read this right now, but here's an insane asylum. And here's a home for inebriates. Now you know where you're going to recruit your Marines. I mean, we got it covered, right? And I love it. What we're saying is that we can dust off that idea with call it full spectrum sustainability. We can do this today. Again, integrating those functional sectors to put the human condition at the center and allow market forces to drive to that end. It is Adam Smith 101 kind of stuff. This is cool stuff, right? But the problem is that everyone, when you start talking about this, it really can't happen. In fact, when I was in the Pentagon, people said, well, you're utopian. Now, I think there's a law against calling a Marine a utopian. I mean, you can't do that, right? I mean, it just is. It kind of pisses you off, right? But then I finally got off my butt, and I kind of remember, hey, when Sir Thomas More wrote the book Utopia in 1516, I mean, he titled it that, used the title Utopia because it was a pun. It was a little play on words. When you break it down, do an etymological drill on the word utopia, it's Greek. Topos is place. Well, there's two ways you can spell the U part of utopia. There's an OU way, and then there's an EU way. Well, the OU way is no place. The EU way is good place. Which one do you frickin' want? I know which one I'm voting for, right? I'm diving in on the EU kind, and yeah, you know what? Yeah, consider myself utopian, that's right. But I want to get to that good place. But I also listen to my Navajo friends when they say you can't get to a good place in a bad way. We just got to fix our way. And if you want to talk about utopia, I bet you the cats that cranked out this document were a wee bit utopian, right? I just want to point out that the first words up here, aren't waiting on Washington. They're we the people of the United States. We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and most importantly, to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Posterity, And Hubert Humphrey reminds us that those words in this preamble of our Constitution are action words, they're verbs. Form, establish, ensure, provide, promote, secure. These words not only articulate the promise of this country, they articulate our obligation to it, our obligation to our kids and our grandkids. That it's not our present-day situation that matters most. It's about our obligation to them and to this country and to this democracy as citizens of a government of the people, by the people, for the people. If you don't want to have it perish from this earth, we better get off our asses and get it on. Because these words require constant tending, constant vigilance. Just like sustainability isn't going to be this end state. It's going to be a condition we're constantly going to have to strive for. Constantly. There is no end. But I can tell you this much, that if we could embrace this cause of sustainability, if we could form a grand strategy around the logic of sustainability, not only would we be subscribing to the best and finest traditions of this country, not only would we be taking on a cause that's worthy of our kids and our grandkids, but if we embrace this cause of sustainability, we will in a complete measure be taking on the cause of all mankind. Thank you.